So historically, this is an event put together by the Watercooler, and historically for hearing audiences, and a place where people come together and tell their stories. So it's a really awesome opportunity that this evening we actually have deaf panellists, so a very, very warm welcome to them tonight. And we'll get to the intro soon, so big hand waves to our team here. I'd also like to thank our interpreters this evening for being with us. So we're really excited and looking forward to this evening and discovering new things, but I think as well, it's about increasing the knowledge that you have of the deaf community. My name is Victoria Lessing, and this is my sign name. I blush so often. Well, when I was much younger, and I hope that I'm not going to blush tonight. Let's just see how we go. So usually this venue, as I said before, we have an individual that would come forward and share their story. And so we've had some discussions, and this evening it's not going to be an individual that stands. It's going to be a group of us telling stories because it's culturally appropriate. So we'll be talking about our experiences of life, and it will be a discussion. And it will be the exchange of information through New Zealand Sign Language. So it will include a lot of facial expression. We'll be using a lot of space. So it will really be an interactive evening, and again, my thanks to our panellists this evening. So I'd like you to introduce yourselves.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Megan Coppage, and this is my sign name because I'm such a sweetie. So that's a BSL sign for sweet, British Sign Language.
Let's practice that, Megan.
My name is David Brown, and this is my sign name. Why? When I grew up, I thought I was a muscle man. I thought it was pretty awesome. I turned out small, but anyway, we won't go into that.
So that's the sign name, David.
My old sign was Anthony. I grew up with this, with a head sort of twist as well, but now I'm Tony. So it's a nice sign, Tony, much better than the one with the head nod.
So here we go. So in the American alphabet, this is the T, and so it's initialised Tony. So as I said, it has been organised with the Watercooler, as well as in conjunction with Merge. So as you can see, Todd's just up here to my right. So thank you very much, Todd. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to work together. All right, so we've put together a list of questions, and you're welcome to talk about whatever you want based on that. And this is a free-for-all, so you have the floor this evening. It's your event, it's your night. This is your opportunity to explain to our audience here. You've got hundreds and hundreds of eyes on you. They're all on you tonight. How do you guys feel?
A little bit nervous.
We'll get there.
Nervous. Oh, okay.
I was just about to I will just close those hands for a moment.
All right. So as you can see, the hands going already. And so how it's going to work, we've got 4 interpreters with us this evening. If you can just raise your hand. So our interpreters are seated at the front. And obviously we have 4 of us here and our 4 interpreters that will be doing the translating from English to sign and vice versa. So panellists, please be nice to our interpreters this evening. Raise your hand.
Now, I just need to explain. I have a woman's voice, but I'm not. I have got a very feminine voice, but I'm actually a very strong and very sort of virile male with a very lovely woman's voice.
And Tony, we actually did try to find a male interpreter, and I'm so sorry, but hence the female voice this evening.
Oh, we're both okay, David and I, accepting that.
Maybe you might be able to grow a man's voice, Megan? So, let's talk about deafness. Do you call yourself deaf, hearing impaired. What label do you use?
I use deaf. I'm deaf, yep. Because I grew up deaf. I was born deaf with no hearing, without the ability to hear. So from a very young age, my parents taught me NZSL, so I grew up signing. So I'm very strongly identify as deaf.
I grew up thinking I was the only deaf person in the world. No one told me, I didn't know that there was deaf and hearing people. Actually, I thought for a while, why do they all moving their lips a lot? And I thought, well, I couldn't do that. And I thought, that's where I'm different.
Okay, so when you realised that you were deaf and you were different from others, how old were you?
Oh, I was probably about 3, maybe. I thought everyone was deaf, and then I realised that there's some people that behave differently.
And your family?
And then I
Tony?
realised that my family were talking, and I thought, that's different from me. I can't do that, and I can't seem to understand what's going on. So that's when I realised there was something a bit different.
Yeah, that was the same with me. I grew up with deaf parents, deaf family. I just assumed the whole world was deaf because everyone that I knew signed. And then when I got out into the hearing world when I was older, I realised that the world wasn't only deaf people. I realised actually we were a minority.
For me, I guess I have a bit of a different perspective because my family, my sister's hearing impaired, and I communicated with her. And as I got older, I met more deaf people at school, so I kind of had a hearing perspective on the world.
Okay, now you mentioned that your sister is hard of hearing. Do you call yourself deaf? What's the difference, David?
So I was the first child in my family, both my mother and my father's generations to be deaf. So, and I'm profoundly deaf. I'm full deaf, and my younger sister is hearing impaired, which means she can hear, so she's not fully deaf. She needs hearing aids to help her communicate with people.
I see. So in terms of communication, how does that work in your family?
So in terms of my sister, I guess we're lucky that my mother went to a sign language night class, so she learnt to sign for us, and we learnt at the same time as her. So. And she could pass it on to my brother as well, who's older, so we'd be able to communicate that way in the family.
I didn't sign, I just talked all the time. I took my name as Anthony Walton, I am 7 years old, and I did that all the time. And can everyone understand me? Can everyone understand my lip patterns? That's what I did.
Wow, so it's been like that, Tony, most of your life?
And we weren't allowed to sign. We were punished if we were signing.
Why did you get slapped on the wrist for?
Because we weren't allowed to use signing. See, I couldn't understand what the hell he was
I'm sorry,
just
I've got
saying.
no idea what you're saying. Can you sign, please?
I grew up and we weren't allowed to sign growing up. I think maybe 10, we made some home signs, very quietly we made some signs. 13, these were 13, 14, this was Anthony Walton, Robert Forrest, a whole range of people. Rachel, Victoria, Laura, Megan, everyone. Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch.
Okay, so you mean this particular sign here represented people?
It was people's names.
Names of people. So anybody had this sign? Mother, father, brother? Human? So what did this mean?
This was any city, Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch.
All cities had the same sign? Really? Well, it's a perfect, adaptation for Auckland. That is the sign for Sky Tower, so Auckland.
And this was a good one. These were numbers, 13, 14.
What do you mean you used your nose?
These were numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then once you got to 13, you had to do this. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Oh, hard case, all right.
And it was fantastic. I loved it like that. You only had a few signs to learn, and the rest you had to just lip read.
Okay. And he's right. What Tony has talked about is a brief explanation there. So we just want to try and draw that out a bit more. I'm not sure if you're aware that sign language is actually banned for over 100 years. So that meant that deaf children having access to education via sign language was impossible. It just didn't happen. The struggle was there. And so they had to rely on lip reading to get the education. So this happened from the 1880s right through to 1980. And then from 1980 onward, there was the breakthrough, and the language, evolved from there. So that was huge for us. So that was a bit of historical information.
So I was there before 1965, so I was an excellent lip reader.
Thanks, Tony. So let's talk about school experiences. So we've talked a bit about family. Did you attend a deaf school? Did you attend mainstream? What was it like? Tell us about your experiences.
Well, for me, I went to Takapuna Primary School, and there was a deaf unit there. So there was older and younger deaf people that obviously were in the same class level. And so we learned that way. And I felt a little bit behind in terms of education. And then on to intermediate school in Takapuna. At that time I had a note taker. And I had some ability to learn, I guess, through that, and I was trying to catch up. And then when I went to Westlake Boys School, I was really lucky to get a full-time note taker. And that's where I felt like I really caught up to the other students, and I sort of worked out how the world works, because I was able to read what the note taker had written for me.
And you're able to follow that. And in terms of sign language?
So the note taker actually had a deaf daughter, which was really lucky, so she knew old signed English, so she did sign to me sometimes. And then at home at night time I'd read the notes she'd written during the day, so it was perfect really.
Right. So you can see, as David's talked about signed English, so as they talked about sign language being banned, and then probably in the early 70s, 80s, that's when early sign evolved, and we kind of adopted that from Australia. And so signed English follows English structure. For example, let's have a shot at it.
I am going to the park.
So no facial expressions. Do that again for us, David, and slow it down a tad.
I am going to the park.
I am going, I-N-G, to the park. Check it, it's not really natural for the community. It's not a natural way of communicating, is it? So you've experienced that. The struggle has been real for you. No facial expressions, wow.
I was the same, but I did orally, so I am going to the park.
Oh, even worse for you, Tony.
Of course, today is quite different. Yeah, so now I'm just, I'm off to the park.
Yeah, I used a lot of sign language, a lot of visual communication. That's how I would sign it.
See, there you go. Park, go. I'm going to the park.
So my school experience, I was in both a deaf unit and a mainstream class. And the deaf unit I found really fun because there was a lot of other kids there, and we would do lots of signing in my first language. We'd tease each other a lot. But I felt like those children were around me were a little bit lower in terms of educational level. They were a bit rougher than me. The education that was available to me in that deaf unit was a bit of a lower standard of what I was used to. It was more of a kind of foundation level. When I started to move into mainstream education, I kind of took on a bit more of educational access there. Mainstream for me was really good. There was a really high level of education there, and I was with my hearing peers there. I did struggle a bit, but I got level 3 in CEA, so that's great. Thank you very much.
Well done, well done. So many deaf people have managed to achieve that academic level.
That's NCEA, yeah.
Yeah, NCEA in my time, what was it? University entrance, bursary? Yeah. Tony.
Plus, when you watch Megan, she's got beautiful facial expressions,
Thank you.
So I wish I had to do that. Yeah, I can't do my face as well as you can. I don't know. You're very fantastic at that.
Well, I was just born in the right year.
It's very sad to have been born that time. Do you think I could rewind, go back in time, start
David,
again?
how about you?
Really, if we think, from primary school, if I had a full-time note taker and interpreter, imagine that. I mean, I could be your future Prime Minister sitting right here, first deaf Prime Minister.
There you go. David. Well, the next Prime Minister of New Zealand, David. Nothing's stopping you, mate.
Seriously, though, when I see Megan and David with the hearing aids and things, I often think to myself, I want that. I wanted to be able to have hearing aids and cochlears. I did visit my doctor once, just recently actually, and my doctor said to me, I'm sorry, you are never expected to improve. Your hearing's never expected to improve. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't even get a cochlear now. And he said to me, I can be a professionally deaf person and you don't have to have any cochlear putsoever. And that, then I sort of put myself in the place.
Great news, Tony. He's a professional deaf man. Thank you so much. Megan, if I could just clarify, you talked about your education and you're a family of deaf people. Now, in terms of the struggles, what were you meaning? Were you meaning that the language foundation wasn't there, so when you would have deep conversations that it was pretty much impossible? What about in terms of education itself? Were you able to access this?
You mean my teachers?
Information in the classroom? Would you able to converse with the other students?
Yeah, and in the deaf units, we had one teacher regularly. So, the rest of the class were lower than me educationally, so the teachers focused on them more. I already kind of had a really good kind of basic knowledge of the world from my family, so when I arrived in the deaf unit, what they were teaching was kind of lower than what I needed. And they focused on that lower common denominator, really.
And so you had interpreter access?
Yes, in the mainstream with other hearing, yes. We had to, but obviously in mainstream I had to rely on the interpreter to access what the teacher was saying, rather than in the deaf unit where we signed.
So the World Federation of Deaf, it's an international organisation, represents 72 million deaf worldwide. Anyway, they've done some research and they've actually said only 2% of deaf children have access to sign language in the educational setting. That's pretty extreme. So that means that a lot of deaf children have got no idea what's going on within the classroom environment. So in New Zealand, that's around 5 to 10% of deaf children having access in school. So yeah, it's slightly higher than that 2%, and I suppose from that perspective we're doing well, but really if you kind of think, if you look at it, a hearing person, that disparity is clear. So we really do have a long way to go.
Yeah, so I really appreciated having that deaf family who could fight for me to have access. I appreciate the time that they put in there, because the rest of those deaf children in my deaf unit didn't have those deaf parents or deaf family members to fight for access to interpreters in education.
Is your family here, Megan?
Yes, Mum and Dad are here, over there and over there.
Put your hands up, Mum and Dad. Oh, hats off to you. Hats off to you both. Well done. Yeah, that's wonderful. It's wonderful that your family is here to support. All right. Would you like to, you two boys over there, like to add anything about education?
I grew up in School for the Deaf. At that stage it was called Sumner, now it's called Van Ash. And we had many brothers and sisters at that school. There was a huge group of deaf children that were at that school, and we all signed together. Just as you had your family, we had this family at school. We didn't really necessarily concentrate very hard on the teachers, but we spent a lot of time, because with the teachers we had to lip read and use oral language, but sports and all those sorts of things, we had a huge group of deaf children, over 100 or more deaf kids at that stage that were boarding, over 100. And so we had 3 or 4 sports teams that were very strong. We were champions in a lot of sports. We had a marching team that did excellently well during that time. Like 65, 67, 68, extremely strong deaf sports teams. And it was really fantastic. I don't know, did any of you guys have any brothers and sisters deaf, Van Ash? Any of you guys went to Van Ash? Any of the deaf people here? Not that many of us. Yeah, I think you probably maybe had a few more friends.
So in my high school, I was lucky really that I had an older brother, because if I missed information, he would be able to give me the information. I'd ask him questions and he'd be able to help me. So in that way, having an older brother really helped me to understand and communicate better.
Sure, so you've got somebody to rely on, don't you? You have that relationship. And if you didn't have that family member there, then what?
I tried to catch up and sometimes I'd miss out.
Then you wouldn't be able to become Prime Minister.
That's why.
There you go. All right, so let's move on to our next question. All right, so you're done with school. You're out into the big, wide world. The world is your horizon. Sorry, the world is your oyster.
Oh, and I finished school on Monday, just to let you know.
She's on to a new chapter of her life. Well done, Megan. And so thinking back, what were you expecting? Yeah. So what were you expecting? What avenue were you going to follow? Were you going to go to uni? Were you going to travel?
So when I finished school, I went to Unitec first off, and I did architectural design to become a draftsman. And at that time, I felt a little bit more responsible for myself. I'm out of the big wide world, and at school it's a bit easier, but now it's me. I'm responsible for me, and I have to, drive to Unitec in the morning, and I have to do all these things. So yeah, it's definitely a different experience.
But at that time, you didn't have an interpreter, did you?
At Unitec, yes, I did. I was lucky. Scott Williams.
Oh, you did, okay.
That's how I, he was my first interpreter.
Okay, so through an interpreter, well, that would be your first experience of equal access.
Yes.
Equal participation. Equal opportunity. Oh, a human right.
And through that interpreter, I learnt New Zealand Sign Language as well, because I noticed that he was signing different and I was signing different. So yeah, I was able to convert to sign language.
So it's a huge transformation, isn't it? It's part of your identity. You've had to adapt and do away with that English, and here we go. It's all on with sign language. Now, the grammatical structure of sign language doesn't follow that of English. For example, in English, you might say a sentence, say, "What is your name?" But in sign language, we'd say, "Your name what?" So you can see how that order is reversed almost. I'm sure some of you in sign language classes are familiar with that. Hands up, who's in a sign language class? All right, yeah, all right, the numbers are there. So that's been part of your learning as well. So sign language has its own grammatical form.
My time was, quite different. What's interesting about it is I don't know, but there were no qualified interpreters at all. None in New Zealand, none at all. No interpreters anywhere. So I left school, and it was impossible for me to go to university or anywhere, so I thought, where should I go? But I was very lucky because my father said to me, "You could be a cabinet maker." And he said, "You just need to do 10,000 hours in apprenticeship and you'll be a cabinet maker." 10,000 hours it was in those days. But anyway, so it was small pay and I was busy working, and they did send me to a polytech, but I went to the polytech and there were a lot of students and I couldn't. It just all went over my head. No interpreter. I went home and my dad said, "Well, what did you learn?" He said, "Oh, I don't know. I couldn't even understand what they were saying. It was even impossible to lip read." So then he sent me to the lecturer at home, and he taught me every night. Every night he went through the book, and I couldn't read it because my English wasn't very good, but I did look at all the pictures, and so I managed to pass without an interpreter. It was just myself, and I thought, well, this is good. But I cheated a lot. I cheated an awful lot because my father helped me a lot to fill in the English, so I cheated majorly throughout the apprenticeship. But I used to go, I think it was a bit like a cowboy, but now I'm qualified. But
So really, your family was always there for you, because they really directed you or really guided you on that journey.
Driver's license, my father taught me A, B, C, D, no English, didn't have an English, and I just learnt 1 was going to be B, 2 was going to be C,
So you
3 was going to be D, and I passed
He
the driver's license
memorised
because I
his
never
test.
read any of it. I couldn't read any of it.
Now that's cheating.
But my father was the interpreter, and he was I did different signs, he did different facial things, and then I drove like, a maniac. I was very happy after that.
Did you get caught?
No, the police never caught me.
For me, I went to Victoria University in Wellington when I was 15. I was in a university course when I was 15. My parents said I could try it out. It would probably be a good step for my future, so I did that. And I'm an almost qualified NZSL tutor now.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, and that was really easy for me, The deaf community has a really strong word of mouth system, so yeah.
Sure. So Victoria University in Wellington offers deaf studies and sign language papers to become a qualified sign language New Zealand Sign Language tutor. So that's the program that Megan's participated in, and
Thank
well
you.
done. So that's university and school, so they're the two avenues there for a very young person. Very assertive.
And unfortunately, my high school doesn't recognise that course at Victoria University. They class that as a holiday. I'm at university studying, but unfortunately I don't get credits for that. But what's funny is that my school's really involved in really recognising lots of other cultural activities. But for some reason, they don't consider my course at Victoria University as something to be celebrated, something to be recognised. They give credits for other cultural studies, other cultural activities, but they don't give me anything for my university course that I've been in, unfortunately.
I'm going to be a wee bit cheeky to ask you, Megan, but did your parents help you at all with any of the things? Are you sure?
I did it all myself. You can ask them, they're here, ask them. I did it
I
myself.
am going to test them later. I shall ask them later. No help at all?
Mum, Dad, is she telling the
I'm
truth?
telling the truth.
Okay. I'm interested to know, Tony, you talked about being a cabinet maker and your apprenticeship and making your way through that study, and it was difficult. So, David, Megan, your experiences?
So really, at Unitec, I was lucky to get a part-time work, and that was through my father. He had a company, and he contracted to another company which employed me. And after a time, my father realised, oh, actually, he's quite a good worker. So he took me, and I worked in his company. And then, so I started young, 17, and I've been continuing in that job still today.
So you're still working for your dad?
Well, over the course of my work, I saved some money, and then I was able to buy the business myself. So I did that with my father and my brother, and we run that together. And then my father wanted to retire, so we sold the business again, and my new boss now owns it, but I continue to work for him in the company.
So you're supervising?
Yes, that's right. So I'm a
And
supervisor
manager.
and also the manual work as well.
See, that's pretty good. So you can see the similarity here, where it's that family involvement to help the children through, and that's quite common amongst the community. For myself, it's a similar story as well. My father really encouraged me, into business and how a business runs, and so I learnt a lot from my parents. And of course, I set up my own business. But really, it was, under that guidance of my parents.
You, me? Right. I am also lucky that I had Dad who taught me as well with the cabinet making for sure. I'd finished after 5 years the 10,000, and I was quite a skilled cabinet maker. But I saw that joinery had paid better than cabinetry. So I decided to go and join a joinery shop fitter builder. And that was much better paid than the cabinet maker. So I moved over there, and there was good pay there, and they said you don't need, cabinet making had to be very, very precise, and things had to be beautifully made. Shop fitting was a little bit rough, it didn't have to be as perfect, it could be a bit rough. And so they influenced and said, I thought, no, I want to make it really nice. They said, oh no, you've got to move faster than this, you've got to get this thing done. So I used to think it was quite a rough way of working, but then as I became more skilled, I sort of started my own business for a while. And I worked with a partner who was hearing, and we had 18 people working for us at that time. And that went well for a little while, and then we sold that business, and I moved to Auckland, whereas I got a job. So
From where, Tony?
I moved from Wellington, and then I became a residential manager, a residential social worker at the village, and then I found a strategy through there to become a manager. So I've had a lot of changes of jobs in my time.
Sorry, you talked about a residential manager for whom?
Well, this is for Cowston Deaf Education Centre for village students. So they board.
Are they deaf?
Yet they're all deaf or hearing impaired. We have about 16 to 18 deaf staff working there at Cowston, and they are wonderful. Some of them are here, so I have to be careful what I say. So they're actually excellent workers.
Brilliant. What a brilliant guy, what a brilliant boss. So as you can see, deaf really have been persevering to make their way and just really maintaining that positivity. This experience isn't common across the board. The literacy age for deaf people is much lower than it is for hearing people. So a deaf school leaver who gets out there into the world, they have the literacy age of an 8-year-old, 8.5-year-old. So many deaf people are unable to read, have access to internet, newspapers, and the like. So we rely on visual communication. Sign language is a visual language. We rely on information that is visual. Anywhere in the public arena. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, so being in a deaf family, which is quite rare in the world, we feel like Tony's story, a lot of hard work. But for me to get into that university course I felt like was quite easy. And for me to be able to get a job as an NZSL tutor, I feel like that'll go pretty smoothly. I feel like my start in a deaf family has done me well.
Yeah, so it wasn't really easy sailing then. Actually, I just want to challenge that. Is it a disadvantage to have a deaf family? You know, the struggle is real. What's it like?
Well, what do you think, Mum and Dad? What are the struggles?
It's cheating.
Ha.
She's cheating.
Okay, so...
You're cheating.
Cheating, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm cheating a little bit.
Okay, so Rachel, Megan's mum, is saying that you can't be critical of deaf parents because the deaf community is small. And so we look at these things in a positive light because you are being watched.
Yeah, that's true. The deaf community expects a really high standard of deaf families to do well.
High expectations from the community.
Yeah.
A lot of pressure.
A little bit. There's a bit of politics involved, I guess.
So too much information, potentially you're getting all that knowledge and it becomes really hard to manage. You know, you've got to have a lot of fingers in a lot of different pies, but it can get quite political.
Yeah, so I've been involved in the board at Deaf Club. I've been involved in a lot of other boards actually, and it is a lot of stress and expectation on me to do well.
You know, as I said, I learnt orally, and then I went into the deaf community, and they were all signing in Wellington, and I thought, what are they doing? It was completely different from what I grew up with. And then Auckland had different signs to Wellington, and every year, Labour weekend, there'd be a sports competition, and you would learn, by going to that competition, you would learn a lot of different signs till you got a lot more fluent, you know, and faster and flasher. And then I travelled overseas a lot, and I went to congresses and different things, and I learned even more signing or ways of signing. And you know, deaf people will borrow signs from overseas and use them within New Zealand. And sometimes you think, oh my God, it hasn't been recognised. At that stage, New Zealand signage hadn't been recognised, and we were borrowing quite a lot of stuff, you know. And you know, the teachers weren't helping us that much, so we could just develop it as much as we want, and it became very powerful, I think. The New Zealand, that's my story. I should slow down, really, shouldn't I? I'll just slow the whole
Beautifully
thing
expressive,
down.
Tony. Beautifully expressive. I hope the interpreter was following that okay. Actually, are all our interpreters following us okay? Do you guys need to have a drink? Sort the vocal cords?
We haven't got any top secret interpreters working as yet, but they might come upon us during the evening.
Okay. So, we might just take a pause and open this up to our audience. Would you like to ask any questions? Any random questions? Maybe you're thinking, just like to clarify a particular point that's been talked about. So just, if you do, raise your hand so I can see the direction of the question. Yes.
So I'll state my question. What I want to know is... Okay, so what I'd like to know is, if you could tell the hearing community one thing, what is the one thing you want them to know?
What about? Anything in specific?
One thing that you think, oh,
Well, if I was going to tell one thing, I would say, that I'm deaf and that they would recognise that and that, not expect me to speak.
Okay, Tony, Megan?
And about deaf gain. Really, historically, the world, there was a man called Thomas Edison who created the light bulb. And he was the first deaf inventor, really. If he hadn't invented the light bulb, the world would be a dark place. So he kind of added colour to the world, which is us.
Fabulous, there you go, deaf gain. Deaf gain. So you're welcome to ask any questions. Yes.
This is my favourite staff member, so she's going to ask something really wonderful. I'm thinking about you two guys. At bedtime at night, and you've got wives, partners who are hearing, how do you communicate at night time in bed?
Oh, Tony.
Well, my first wife was deaf, and we had a wonderful relationship. It worked well. We communicated perfectly. We had no problem with that at all.
Tony.
Lights on, yes. But and I had 2 children, 1 boy and 1 girl. And the deaf way is having the light on and off when you make love. So you turn the light on and you have a girl, you turn the light off, you have a boy. I don't know if any of you knew about this, but that's the truth of the matter. So we communicated well, and then I sold this deaf wife and bought a second-hand hearing interpreter, and that's been fantastic ever since. She's very useful. You haven't really answered the question about how you communicate in bed, though, really. Well, we have the light on and off.
David.
I think, technology takes over. I use my phone as a light and we talk to each other that way. And then we say goodnight and then turn it off and we go to sleep.
Okay. One more question.
I've got one.
As a member of the deaf community, how much discrimination do you face against on a day-to-day basis?
Yes. Definitely there's discrimination every day. Saturday, Sunday's discrimination. There's lots of blocks on a Saturday, Sunday because the video interpreting service is not able to be accessed on a Saturday and Sunday. And so that's every day. I get frustrated about that. Monday to Friday is wonderful. Days of the week are perfect. But after 8 at night, there's discrimination again because it closes. So we can't do things. And I've got to get my wife to ring for me. I'm very lucky because she can do that, but it's not right, really.
Sure. So video interpreting service was set up around 10 years ago now. And so the deaf community lobbied for the service to be set up. But the service isn't 24/7. Fingers crossed that's coming. So tell us, what are some barriers you experience?
You say every day. No, but it does happen now and again. One day, staff might come up to me. Some know that I'm deaf, so they communicate with me, but others find out that I'm deaf, and then they're like, oh, is there someone else I can talk to? Because I can't communicate with him. So, or if there's an urgent call that needs to be done at work, I can't text that, obviously, and wait 1 or 2 hours. So I have to ask someone to call for me, to get that information straight away.
I think between Megan and I might be a little bit different. Megan's time and my time is quite different. I think my time was the best, really, because we could speed and the police would stop us and there were no interpreters. And so we were often allowed to be free. We never got fines. Whereas Megan's time now, they'll go, oh, I'll just get an interpreter. And
That's right. The dilemma these days, though, is that some of the police can actually sign. So we can't get away with it so often
so there,
now.
na Megan.
Okay, so just in response. I think that we do face challenges, we do face discrimination. However, we're really resourceful and we look for solutions. Many deaf people will in turn say, captions, you know, what about sign language interpreters, or let's communicate this via pen and paper, let's write down what we need. Let's move forward. So I think that attitude is really vital in this picture. I mean, when we wake up in the morning and we get out of bed, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm deaf, another barrier. We wake up in the morning, we open our curtains, we let the fresh air in, and we get on with our day. We don't think of barriers. If we come across somebody that cannot sign or something is not accessible, well, that's the barrier right there. But over time, things have been changing. Improvements are being made. We're getting so many more people into New Zealand. And I think with that, the country is changing. We're more open-minded and we're being more resourceful around how we communicate. Prior to that, it was just a huge communication shock to try and communicate. But I think things are really, really changing now. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for those questions. We've got a few more questions to get through. So we've talked about employment, job search. Tell us about, I suppose, any barriers that you faced in the workplace, be it in professional meetings or networking, for example, in a public place, places that you may go to, maybe at the yoga class, boxing class, going to an orchestra. So outside your work life, what's it like?
Really, I think I'm lucky because I've got a lot of skills in sports, so I really enjoy that, and I went to a cricket club. And really in sports, if you think about it, there's not much communication. You bowl, you bat, I mean, that's pretty much it, really. There's a lot of body language, and you sort of, they do the score, that type of thing. So, and it's the same with rugby as well. I played deaf rugby. I mean, we can sign to communicate, but really there's not a lot of communication. You just play the game. So I think there's no barrier in that, in terms of that. The goal is to win, or to work with your teammates. So in that terms, in sports, there's not a lot of barriers.
Yeah, so a lot of deaf community are involved in a variety of sports, and so it doesn't require much communication.
Similar, I think, to David. School for the Deaf, we had hockey, and we played really well. And then I found barriers in Wellington. When we had the whole deaf team, it was fine, but my dad said to me, you need to be part of the hockey team, and it was all hearing people. I was the only one. I played hockey quite well, and they...
Reserve.
I was reserve, you see. So I was in the team, but I was reserve. And so I would watch the game being played, and my dad said to the guy, let him in, let him have a turn. And I was like, Dad, for God's sake, don't say that. And then the game was about to finish, and just towards the end. And I thought, right, they weren't passing to me, they were being very selfish. So I thought, right, I shall be selfish myself, and I will just play the game on my own and get the goal. And I just went straight through. And then the next week, they played for a while, and they had a big team talk, and they were all talking. Of course, they couldn't understand what was going on, and they talked about how the gameplay was going to be. But then, as we went on, a lot of these guys came, and at my 21st, I decided I'd just speak my speech on my microphone, and I spoke
With a broken
using
voice,
my voice to the public, and there was a few deaf there, and they were like, God, we can't understand you. Neither could the hearing people either. But it was a very weird time.
Well, there you go. What about you, Megan?
Yeah, I grew up playing sports as well, specifically softball, because my dad's a pretty skilled softball player, so I've been involved since I was a kid. My dad taught me how to play So yeah, as I was growing up, I was, I'd play for fun. We didn't need much communication in those days. And in high school teams were more about kind of improving our skills, and that involved a little bit more talking. But unfortunately, there wasn't funding for interpreters in that kind of context, so I would have to adapt my communication style to work more with hearing people, which meant that there was a lot more limited communication that I could be involved with.
So all of you guys have participated in sports. What else? Any other areas?
Can I just say, the teacher told me that you need to make as much, or the teachers told us that you need to make as much noise as you can when you're playing. So we used to make lots of noise as we were playing, and the other hearing teams get so petrified of us that they would just, often we'd won. And what happened was, when I went to Wellington, I did the same thing. I'd use my voice, and my dad would go, "Don't use that voice, it's awful." I got a bit confused because I thought that was how we won the game, because that's how the deaf team won. We just make all this noise and people were scared shitless, really, and so we could do that.
Do you use your voice now?
No, I don't use my voice now.
So are you using it now?
Well, I don't know. Do I? I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know if I use my voice. Sometimes I do.
Sure, in everyday life though. Voice on or off?
If I'm talking to you, I have my voice off, but if I'm talking to hearing people at school, I have my voice on.
For me, I speak just to communicate quicker with work staff, but I can adapt as well to sign language.
I'm really strongly deaf. I don't use my voice. Well, I haven't trained my voice yet, I guess. I'm just a signer. That's my identity.
Maybe I could use a microphone and see if people understood me.
I think not, Tony. I think not.
I have got beautiful singing voice.
We don't want our audience to run away, Tony.
The teacher told me I had a beautiful voice, so I'm assuming it's pretty good.
Any funny stories, any memories, anything that you'd like to share this evening? Something awkward, perhaps? Random.
I have one, when I went to high school, I had a discussion with a deputy principal there, and he said, "David, so you're deaf, right?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." "So all your life has been deaf?" "Yeah, I was born deaf." Okay. So I understand what it's like, actually, because there was this one week and I had one blown eardrum, and so, I have a good understanding of that. I was like, that's not really the same. And so we kept talking, and he's like, "David, I have a really serious question to ask you." I'm like, okay. Can you lip read in the dark? I'm just like, no. God.
That's impossible. Holding the torch just so you can see.
When I was 50, I invited my family to the Deaf Club. There was quite a number of people there, a lot of signing going, a lot of discussion. My sister was not at all happy with me. She came up to me and she said to me, "Will you please stop signing? You know you can talk well. Why are you doing that?" And I was so embarrassed because there were lots of deaf people there. And I thought, well, I can sometimes change around. I do change for her, but that was embarrassing. I just thought, oh my God, she does not like me signing at all.
Yeah, so it was an embarrassment at that time. I know my parents would say to me, "Victoria, please minimise your sign language in public." So I'd be with my deaf mates and we'd be signing away, and they're like, "Victoria, we're being watched. You're drawing attention to us. Minimise those signs." So I'd do it. But really, sign language for us is about tone. So if there's a lot of talking going on and it's loud, we're going to sign loud. We're expressive. We're going to sign bigger. So as a deaf community, we have a reason for using a bigger signing space or a smaller one. If it's time to be reserved and it's a quieter space, then we'll change. We'll adapt to that situation.
Yeah, and talking about public places, my mum and dad often tell me not to sign in public. Maybe when I was about 13 or 14, I really felt the discrimination around the world, among the world of the hearing, about my signing, because at that time I hadn't really developed a really strong signing identity. Of course, I grew up deaf, but I kind of was trying to find my way through the hearing world at that time. But in a few years, I certainly became more assertive about how I was signing and not caring about what people thought.
So it's about being yourself, isn't it? And that's a really important statement to make. you think you're right, and you go with it. You go with your gut. You know, we shouldn't have to adapt ourselves to other people's expectations.
But related to that question, some signs are kind of considered rude and good. You know, the sign for thank you is great, but the other sign is fuck you. So some people who are learning signs accidentally sign fuck you instead of thank you. But the worst one is that British, a
Sorry,
bit
got
of banging on
noise
the walls.
going on. Sammy, what was it? What is it? What is it? Is it music? What is it?
Comedy club.
Oh, here we go. See the deaf people. We have no idea what that is. We can feel there's a strong vibration going on. Oh, here we go. Woo!
So yeah, with an English accent, saying F-A-N-K for thank. If you sign thank you, but your lips say thank you, that's kind of like a double up of weird signing there.
Yeah, there's another one like that as well. And so they have two different meanings. So in New Zealand, we'll sign Coca-Cola this way. In the UK, what does this sign mean in the UK? SEX means sex. So sex in the UK. So Kiwis heading over to UK, go to a pub in England. I'd like a glass of Coke, please. Highly offended. So yeah, a lot of misunderstandings with our signs.
I think some hearing people use this sign, whereas deaf people don't like to use it, or it's quite separate. There's some things that are different, that are sort of
It's
available in the hearing
universal.
world.
It's universal. Like there's this other sign here. This one here. I mean, that's not a sign that deaf people made up. It belongs to the hearing community. They sign for bullshit. So there are times we know we haven't made up these signs. Maybe just to let you know as well that the creation of sign language, how did it happen? Well, we need to go way, way, way back in history. Probably no different to other languages. Spoken languages. You know, where did they originate from? Well, we don't know. And some people think, oh, this is the sign language, it's relatively new. No, it's a very, very old language. We have been influenced by British, though BSL, and Irish, now Auslan, which is Australian Sign Language, and of course New Zealand Sign Language. So the three countries share a similarity in the language use. Well, before we wrap up, I'd like to ask our panellists, what's the best thing about being deaf? For me, you know, so being deaf or a sign language user, power to the hands, I say. So what's the best thing?
For me, I guess when I grew up, I wasn't in the deaf community much, and then when I went in the deaf community for the first time, wow, there's so many connections. I felt closer, you know, automatically closer than the hearing world. So yeah, just that automatic connection, and I feel a lot more deaf now, you know. And it's also faster for me at work as well. Like, for example, I wear a mask when I work, and I can sign, and I don't have to take off the mask. And so if my workmates can do that as well, use body language, use simple signs or gestures, then, you know, we can communicate easier. And I've even seen my workmates, two hearing people, using it without me there.
So sign language does contribute to the workplace, you know, because if it's a noisy environment, or if it's the pub, if you're underwater, various uses. Signing through a window, good point.
For me, the best thing about being deaf is, you know, obviously we come in front of a lot of barriers in our lives. So I think that in the workplace it's the same. You come across a lot of barriers, but we as deaf people, we're experts in getting through those barriers. And the proof is that NZSL became an official language. English isn't even an official language of New Zealand, and NZSL is now. We lobbied for many years to get the legislation that made that happen. So, if you need help getting English as a third official language, just let us know. We're so happy to help.
Very funny. Well done. English becoming an official language? Ooh, challenging.
I've been trying to think for a while what would be the strength of me being deaf. I think when I meet people, I like to change to match their communication style, or if they're great fluent signers, I can do that, or they're even more fluent, I can change it to that. Or sometimes they know no signing whatsoever. I love teasing people who don't know much sign. And then they get nervous about what's going on till they can understand. So I love that. I love that strength of being able to change frequently. And one day, am I allowed to do?
Go for
can
it.
I do?
Go for it, Tony. Eyes are closed.
So,
Up to you.
so I'm going to. If you all could watch me. Yeah, no, hang on. I'll just get the interpreter to explain, and then I'll turn my voice off. If you all watch me, and then the interpreter will stop voicing, and then you'd have to worry about being, then you'll see that I'm a real man as well. So you'll see the sign. So I want you to watch me, and the deaf people you're not allowed to put your hand up, okay? None of you are allowed to do any of this. The others here, we've just got to watch. Why are you laughing? Why are you guys laughing? Why would you be laughing at this? Do you have any idea why you're laughing? Do you think it's funny? Okay. All right, I'll start again. Interpreter's laughing as well. I think they've got a slightly dirty mind, you see. What this is just turning a shower on, making sure that the water's right, the temperature's right, turning off the shower. It's a very clean story. That's my favourite thing. I love teasing people like that. They think I'm going to say something really shockingly rude.
Well done, Tony. So we like to play with sign language, and very, very creative. So thank you for that little entertainment sideshow.
Just to add to Tony's story about being able to match communication styles, really internationally, for example, last year I went to a camp in Melbourne, and there were 30 different countries represented there. So nobody had the same sign language. One person was presenting there using international sign language, and we all understood it. All of us different sign language users, we understood what they were signing to us because they were communicating visually. So that's what I'm really proud about being deaf.
Sure, so it shows adaptability, and I think if we look at other countries in terms of communication, the barrier isn't there, and so it is an advantage. We travel endlessly. As a group here, there's so much information that we can share with our audience this evening. However, time is not on our side, and it's time to conclude. So before we do, are there any questions or comments, or would you like to ask a question to a specific panelist or myself before we wrap up for the evening? You are welcome to stay with us. We'll be at the bar, mix, mingle, practice some NZSL with us, if you know some NZSL. But I hope you've really enjoyed it this evening. So are there any questions?
I have a question. What time can we stay till? Can we stay till midnight? 2 a.m.?
So this room needs to be closed at 10. However, downstairs the bar area is open. So that, just to clarify, the question was, can we stay longer? And obviously, for deaf people as well, we value communication. Monday through Friday. Many deaf people are within hearing families, and so they're waiting to have a conversation. If we say that at the dinner table, we want to say something, because no, we'll tell you later, we'll talk to you later. Oh, but what are you guys talking about? Oh, it's nothing important. And you see the humour, the faces, like, what are you guys laughing about? And it's like, oh, it's just a little thing. It's not important. So we've been exposed to that all of our lives. We've just sat there patiently. So when it comes to a deaf club, deaf events, deaf parties, we can't wait to meet other deaf people. However, bar staff are not our friends, because they want to get home and sleep. And so the lights flicker on and off, and when they go off, that means our communication is done. So we have something that we call the long goodbye, and it's a very culturally deaf thing.
Yeah, outside on street lights, that's where we'll go and gather once the pub closes and the lights turn off. Yeah, we move down the street between the darkness and the street lights.
Yep, like moths, like a moth to a flame.
I try time management now as I'm older. I do not hang around for much longer. I usually am gone quite quickly.
So that translates to Tony needs his beauty sleep. He's in bed early.
I'd just like to ask all of the panellists, anyone who wants to answer, can you think of any funny times that you watched weird things happening between hearing people, or like the hearing perspective of the deaf community? Anything funny that you'd like to add about that perspective?
Tony.
My favourite thing is Simon
X Factor?
Cowell on
X
X
Factor.
Factor with a buzzer. I love watching that. I don't understand things, but I love the expression. I love the way he sits there, and I just watch his expression, and I just think, I copy it. I just watch him all the time and then try and copy his facial expressions when he's doing X Factor.
Right, so from a hearing perspective of deaf people, what is something that is quite weird? It's a challenging question. I need to think about that as well.
Well, from my experience, I think negative things like people think that, hearing people think that, we have to pay taxes to support deaf people on the benefit, the idea that deaf people are a burden. But actually we help the world. We help the world be a better place, I think.
I suppose my response is that I think that hearing people think that we need help. We don't need your help. It's like, I'll do this for you. You'll do things for us, so we're not capable. So we don't have the opportunity to grow and develop. For example, a job interview. Deaf are often sidelined. The skill level between a deaf person and a hearing person may be the same, but that automatic right goes to the hearing person. Go figure. Are we broken? I think not. I'm a fully functioning human being. I just don't use my ears.
Are there any funny stories about hearing people trying to communicate with you and they think they're doing a really good job? Like, like saying to a deaf person, can you drive? And you getting that question and thinking, do you think I'm blind? You know, any story like that?
You say funny, not really funny, but more of an awareness, I guess. For me, when I'm working or something, someone might be talking behind my back and while I'm working, and so obviously someone else will tap me and they'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry, oh my God, are you deaf? And they kind of back away and they're like, oh my God, what do I do? He's deaf. Oh, okay, thumbs up, walk away as fast as you can.
The old thumbs up trick.
Well, I think like hearing joke and hearing humour and deaf humour can be very different. So the hearing people are laughing and deaf people aren't, or vice versa. The deaf people tell a joke to the hearing people and the hearing people just don't even find it funny at all. And there's quite a mismatch there. So if the deaf match the hearing, then they change their mode so much that they sometimes you've got to put it into a poetic form or something that's very visual. But the other way around, hearing try and do that, it's impossible. They can't seem to do that very well. They can't seem to change what they're doing. As far as a funny, I don't know.
Yeah, for example, hearing people, you know, encourage us to come along and sign sing. We're like, what? But now we're following the lyrics itself. So, you know, but it's often a play on sound or it's the rhythm. But it doesn't translate for sign language. We follow hand shape. So, for example, this hand shape here must be throughout the song. You see what I mean? So it isn't attached to sound, so sometimes it's that communication breakdown. It just doesn't work. So there needs to be that, I suppose, that middle ground found. I remember the first time that I headed overseas, and I got on the plane. Plane took off.
Propellers, was it? Was that how old you are? Was it?
It was a small plane, all right? And anyway, so what happened was the plane landed and a wheelchair was, brought to the space in front of me. And so I looked around to think who would be requiring the services of a wheelchair. Made eye contact with the woman. And I said, is this for me? And she says, why, yes, it is. I was like, okay. No, I'm deaf. My legs are not broken. I can walk. I had to be polite, however, and the woman said, "No, it's part of my job. I need to follow this criteria." Right. So this was Malaysia Airlines, and. But you know what, and I said to her, just don't worry about it. I got my bags. And she goes, no, you must sit down. It was my first time experience, but she had gloves on as well. And I thought, oh, maybe it's just this cultural thing. But I didn't know what to do. I was really uncomfortable, but I had to sit in the chair. So we had an argument. And anyway, there I was, sitting in the wheelchair, holding my bag, and she was pushing me off because she was doing her job, you know? And I'm like, wow, there you go. And I look back at that experience. You know, I really don't know. I just think, what, should I have just taken off? What should I have done? Who knows? So it's just one of those things where, as deaf community, we're put into that disabled category because of our deafness. But we have a history, we have a language, we have a culture. And I know that for varying disability groups, they have their own stories as well, but it was just having to be that difference between the two. So, is there any message you'd like to tell the world? One statement.
Well, I just want you to see us as contributors, not a burden to society.
Just don't think, oh, poor them, they're deaf. We're the same as a hearing person. I'm the same as you.
Honestly, my favourite song is, I would like to sing to them. That's what I would like to do. That would be my favourite thing
Really?
to do.
Do you want to sing?
Off you go, Tony. Go, do it.
Well, actually, time's run out. So, thank you. Tony? No?
I'm not going to say anything now, that's right.
Thank you. Look, thank you to our audience. Thank you so much for coming along this evening. Thank you very much. And to our panellists for your time in this very warm room. Thank you for your work. And massive, massive thanks to our interpreters, our 4 interpreters this evening. Thank you so much. And thank you, Todd. And also Alice, to both of you for organising and working so hard for the event this evening in conjunction with Merge to make sure that this worked well for us. So it's great being in touch with you. For the lead up to this, we did have funding from Creative New Zealand and also Auckland Local Board. So for Merge New Zealand, obviously sign language is the language we use in New Zealand. And so remember the sign for thank you, not F you, all right? It's just simple from the chin forward. Good morning. So practice this with me now. Let's give it a shot. Good morning. Good night. Very simple. So in terms of vocab, I suppose with Te Reo, most of you would know a bit of Te Reo vocab. So we're really encouraging you all to learn some sign language vocab. We offer summer classes as well, so check out our website. We'll be kicking off 2019 season, and there are different levels that are offered as well. So level 2, level 3, and so 21st of November, we also have a Fun in the City sign language evening. So get along to that. You're more than welcome to come along and join us. We've got a lot of games that will be happening with our sign language tutors. And thank you. Level 1. You are most welcome, Tony. All right, so we'll leave it at that. And again, you're more than welcome to approach our panellists directly after this. But thank you so much, everyone.